release its TRH, so it won't release it until it needs to. It's just like a little constant loop that keeps going back and forth. Now let's look at the signs and symptoms. How does the patient want to look to you as a nurse with this condition? Let the condition's name help you whenever you're thinking of these signs and symptoms. We have hypothyroidism. Everything is working really slow and low because that is what hypo means, low. So what it's going to be happening, patients going to be struggling with weight gain because they are not burning calories like how T3 and T4 normally allows, so they're going to be gaining weight. They're going to be able to tolerate the cold because their thermostat is not working correctly. They're going to have a possible border on their neck. You'll see a bulging area on the neck, and this is because you have constant stimulation from that anterior pituitary gland trying to say, hey thyroid, release the T3 and T4 so we can increase our levels. So from that class of stimulation it starts to swell and you get the border, and this is a big song in Hashimoto's and disease, which is a cause of hypothyroidism, which we'll go over here in a second. So remember that they'll feel very tired and fatigued, have a slow heart rate. Remember, sympathetic nervous system just isn't working right, thinning and brittle hair. They'll struggle with depression, constipation from the slow GI process. They'll have memory loss, foggy mind, brain just doesn't feel like it's working. They can have myxedema, which is swelling of the eyes, face, puffy face with a waxy type appearance, dry skin and neutral problems like heavy periods or irregular periods. Now these signs and symptoms in the early stages, the person tends just to be struggling with fatigue, feeling tired, and then once I get in the late stages they'll start having these thinning hair, these big symptoms that make them start noticing what's going on. Now let's talk about the causes. What causes this condition? This mainly affects women middle-aged to older adults, and one cause is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This is the most common cause of hypothyroidism. It's an autoimmune condition, so the body is causing it to attack itself. What it's doing, it is attacking your thyroid gland, where it's causing it to not to produce any more T3 and T4, so thyroid gland is not working. And remember, they're going to probably have that water from that because the anterior pituitary glands trying to stimulate the thyroid, hey, produce some T3 and T4, but it's not, and so you get swelling of the neck. So remember that that's a telltale sign with Hashimoto's, or they are not consuming enough iodine. This is another cause, iodine deficiency, and so it's important for them to consume foods that are high in iodine like your seafoods, seaweed, eggs, dairy, things like that. Now here in the US it used to be a problem, that's not very much because our table salt is now have iodine, but in countries who don't put iodine and salt, people do struggle with how to consume enough iodine, so watch out for that. A pituitary tumor, again, that's just because you have a tumor on the pituitary, anterior pituitary. It's not releasing the TSH. Thyroid gland actually is fine, it's not messed up, but it's just not getting enough stimulation, so that's why the physician would check a TSH level to see if it's how those levels have been. And another thing that can cause hypothyroidism is actually a patient being treated for hyperthyroidism, so they are getting the radioactive iodine or the anti-thyroid medicine medications that can cause their levels to just bottom out, and it can actually send them into hypothyroidism. Now let's look at the nursing interventions and the medications. So what are you going to do for this patient as the nurse? The nursing interventions, first thing we want to do is we want to monitor them for myxedema coma, which is a life-threatening condition caused by uncontrolled hypothyroidism, maybe where they abruptly stopped taking their medications, or there was the removal of the thyroid gland and there's a snow hormones present. So what happened? The body literally is shutting down, it's slowing down to the point of death, and again it's going to mimic a lot of those symptoms of hypothyroidism, but it's going to be exaggerated. What you're going to get hypothermia. They're not just going to be able to not tolerate the cold, but they're going to go into hypothermia. They're going to have extreme drowsiness, respiratory failure, bradycardia that goes along with literally the sympathetic nervous system. It's just shutting down. Hypoglycemia, hyponatremia, hypoglycemia, because your thyroid hormone plays a role in glucogenesis, so you're going to have that drop, and this is just going to progress to a coma, so it needs to be treated. So we need to give them some thyroid replacement hormones fast. Also with this condition with hypothyroidism or in nursing interventions, you want to monitor their heart rate, their blood